everyone, I'm Bandish, the founder of The Curious Mindset, a private community for technology leadership teams powered by 64 Tech, an IT solutions provider of hardware, cloud, and IT services. Although we're powered by 64 Tech, our core principle is always to give more than we take. There are no membership fees, no catch, just a shared commitment to growth, and rest assured you won't be bombarded with any sales pitches. Please do follow our dedicated LinkedIn page to stay updated on how 64 Tech can support you with any technology challenges, or feel free to contact me directly if you're looking to shake things up with your current IT suppliers. Now, while 64 Tech delivers technology solutions, some of the biggest challenges technology leaders face aren't technical, they're human. As leaders, we're often under pressure to appear all-knowing, which makes it difficult to admit what we don't know or ask questions that allow us all to be vulnerable. That's exactly why the Curious Mindset exists. For any new members joining us today, this is a space for where we combine coaching, mentorship, and community to help technology leaders grow. We created the Curious Mindset to help build the essential people and leadership skills we didn't know we needed, and to tackle three of the most prominent challenges technology leaders face. Firstly, individual impact, empowering leaders with insights and strategies to drive personal and professional growth, especially for those without traditional support. Secondly, team impact, strengthening leadership as the foundation of high-performing teams, improving collaboration and results. And thirdly, leadership support. Leadership can be isolating. We connect technology leaders to foster relationships that drive collaboration and excellence. This community grew out of my own experience and a desire to help others overcome the struggles I faced when I became a leader. I know how challenging that journey can be, and our North Star remains simple: no one leads alone. At 64 Tech, the mantra is together we grow, and the Curious Mindset is how we can make that happen. This is a space for us to learn, share, and grow more confident as technology leaders, and our mission to help technology leaders become the best versions of themselves. Before we dive in, a quick favor: many of our members aren't seeing our posts. If you'd like to support what we're building, just head to our LinkedIn page, hit the bell icon, and select all to never miss a post. And if you're enjoying these fortnightly sessions, a quick Google review goes a long way. It takes under a minute, but makes a real difference. If our team reach out asking for a short LinkedIn recommendation, we'd greatly appreciate that. Finally, if you know other tech leaders who would benefit from this space, please invite them by sharing our website. There's a short form they can fill in to join. In return, my commitment to you is this: we will keep listening to your feedback and doing everything we can with the team to keep making this better, fortnight after fortnight. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers: our resident host, Andy McMenemy, our technology leader co-host, Steve Maxwell, and our special guest, Liane Davey.
Bandish, thank you so much. Thank you for your continued support and your generosity in allowing the Curious Mindset to not only survive, but to thrive through difficult times, and help everybody to just raise the bar and set their sights on becoming the very best version of themselves that they can be in their leadership roles. It's my absolute pleasure today, ladies and gentlemen, to invite and to welcome Liane Davey with us today. Liane is a returning speaker. She's the author of The Good Fight. And today she's going to be helping us on the subject that you've all been asking for more and more, on how to manage up. But not just to manage up with those difficult relations with some of our leaders, but how to do it in a way that has crystal clear clarity, in a way that allows you to feel confident, in a way that allows you to operate with integrity, even though those challenging conversations can be very difficult to have. I mean, often when I'm delivering leadership programs to middle tier managers, they often say, does these theories and principles apply to my boss? Because I don't feel I'm the problem. I feel the boss is the problem. So Liane, I wonder if you could give us some insights into this curious thing called imposter syndrome, when we have to have conversations that challenge us in business. Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Andy, and thanks, Bandish, for this community. What an amazing opportunity. I feel like I'm with my people because I did my PhD research many years ago on how team dynamics affect innovation in high-tech teams. So this I'm with my people, feels great. And yeah, managing up, feeling like we aren't getting what we need, that for our leaders, somehow the rules of good management don't seem to apply. This is a juicy topic, right in the bullseye for me as somebody who has spent her career working on productive conflict and messy people stuff. So I'm really excited to be here. Can we just start with talking about what I mean when I say managing up? Because I think, first of all, when I started working on managing up, I went looking for definitions, and the drivel that is on the internet about managing up is painful. It was like just being your best self. Like, what? Obviously, these people haven't had to work for assholes and to actually know what it means to manage up. Managing up to me is reversing the direction of a managerial relationship so that you can get what you need to do what's required of your role. Like, that's what managing up is. Basically, it's I am not getting the direction, I am not getting the feedback, I am not getting the resources, I'm not getting what I need to do my job. So I need to flip the relationship on its head and start managing my manager so I can get what I need. So let's just start with that. That's what managing up is. But it's also important to say managing up is not bullying your boss. So it's not insubordination. It's not mutiny. It's not right. So if you think that you're smarter than your boss, if you have your own strategy that contravenes your boss's, that's not managing up. That's insubordination. So we also need to be careful as we're talking about this, that we're talking about, this is about a person who cares about their business, who isn't getting what they need to do their role effectively. And so who's, changing the polarity of the managerial relationship, but for the good of the organization. That's what we're talking about today. That's that integrity third piece, right? So important.
I like to call it having a courageous conversation, Liane.
It definitely requires courage, doesn't it? Yeah.
Oh, is it frozen?
Oh, is it frozen?
Oh, no, on you go.
No, go ahead. So where do you want to dive in? How do you want to get started? Let's go.
Yeah, take us straight into the meat of the subject.
Okay.
How do we talk about this?
Yeah. So why don't we talk about it in 3 chunks? Because we're humans, we like chunks. So in 3 chunks, let's start with, like, how do you get it? So one of the reasons you need to manage up is that your boss is not clear at all about what they want, about what matters. You're like, oh my, I was just in one of these on Monday. This was an engineering consulting firm. And the whole message is from the CEO is like, grow, but we've got to be more profitable. And so the team was really feeling like, okay, which of those, which comes first, right? So the first thing you want to do in managing up is you want to do all your research to understand, how is your boss being measured? Right? If you're reporting to the CEO of a publicly traded company, it's easy, right? The metrics, the things you're reporting monthly and quarterly, the stock price, all those things, it's very obvious. But this company that I was talking to, employee-owned private company, all right, what is it your boss is being measured on? That's the first thing you need to understand in managing up, because that's your greatest leverage point. Making sure that as you're thinking about what's important, as you're figuring out your focus and where your energy is going, that it's going toward the things your boss is being measured and managed on. That is absolutely step 1. Step 2, the number 1 reason I find people need to manage up is their bosses fail at prioritization. So they say, we have to grow and be more profitable. We have these 7 priorities for the year. So let's just stop and talk about the word priority for a moment. Priority comes from the Latin word priori. The word priori means first. It was the word priority came into the English language in the 15th century and survived 500 years without a plural. 500 years without a plural until recently when we're like priorities first and first. And so it's a big part of managing up is helping your boss to articulate what comes first. So the conversation that I facilitated this week was, okay, in growth and profitability, you know, we could grow by taking on this big new contract that's a little bit below where we want our margins. Should we take it or not take it? Like, how do we, and helping a boss to articulate in some of those trade-off decisions to help you better prioritize is a really important managing up strategy. So, you know, can you at least get to partial prioritization? So if they've given you 5 urgent things, then you need to figure out which am I going to do first. The interesting thing is they probably won't have a good answer for you. So, you know, not all bosses that need to be managed are assholes. Some of them are incompetent. They may be lovely, incompetent people. And so they don't know what to do first. So you have to manage up by saying, okay, I've looked at all these things based on this, this, and this. I'm going to do this one first, this one second, this one third. How does that jive with you? Is that right? So second thing, first, know how they're measured. Second, help them prioritize. And that probably means not asking an open-ended question and then and then waiting for them to answer. It probably means you using your judgment and putting a list there. And if they go, no, 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 that needs to be one. Okay, great, right? Final thing I'm going to say on sort of getting it and being aligned with your boss, take the word why out of your vocabulary. So they're telling you that you need to do something and it's so tempting to be like, well, like, why would we do that first? Or why does this customer? The word why, we know from putting people in fMRI scanners, the word why triggers very defensive responses. So every question you want to ask that starts with why, find a new way to say that question that doesn't start with why. Take me through your thinking. What is making that the highest priority? Those kinds of questions. So that's my top 3 for getting better aligned. Know what they're measured on. Make that your touchstone for every conversation. Secondly, put in front of them a prioritization that puts things in order, because managing up is often about, I can't do 5 things at once. And then just delete the word why from your vocabulary, because a manager that needs to be managed is probably one who will get defensive. So you want to pull that out of your language. So let me zip it for a sec and just
And when they come to you with the crisis of the week or the flavor of the week, it's a nice way to step in and say, well, how am I supposed to do that? Where would you like these prioritized and where do you want this inserted?
Yeah, exactly. And my guess is when you ask that, they're not going to have an answer. They're going to say something like, well, that's your job, or you figure it out.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying you tend to, when you're managing up, need to overstep. You need to do some of their job for them.
Yeah.
So I would go in that exact scenario. I would say, okay, I know that, or you've said clearly that the most important thing we're trying to do this year is improve our margins. And so given that, it sounds to me like the most important thing I need to do first is this. So you're tying back to what matters to them and you're proposing prioritization rather than asking them to give you prioritization. Now, it does take courage because you might get it wrong. I'll tell you, you get it wrong less often than you think because they don't actually have a good answer. So if you put an answer, most of the time they'll be like, well, that's fine as long as you get it all done. You'd be like, on it. Yeah.
That's having that confidence, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And so much of that is also about, you know, do I have support networks elsewhere? Right? So do I have a mentor who isn't my boss so that I have someone that I can share scenarios with or ask for advice from? Do I have peers who are also coping with the same boss so that we can have a meeting after the meeting to say, okay, are we at least aligned? So I always say, you know, you see kids who've had abusive or just absent parents, and if the siblings stick together, they can survive so much. Same with a bad boss. So are we at least aligned as a team? So looking for support networks, mentors outside, previous bosses, other bridges in the organization to people, and of course your peer network, not to mention like just your mates, so that you can actually like go for a pint after and blow off some steam. But yeah, it takes some courage. But I would say when you are reversing the polarity of that managerial relationship, it's less asking questions in that case and more putting out proposals of how you're going to handle it and then getting their reaction, trial ballooning things.
Yeah, but it is all about that clarity, Liane. You're absolutely right. The confidence to ask those questions is the only thing that's going to give you the clarity, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Because that's it is it's just untenable to work without it, right? And of course the vicious circle we get into is when we have the boss giving us 7 priorities, we have no clarity, we kind of try to do them all, and then of course ironically and tragically get less done and therefore get further in the hole and then draw more of the ire of the the boss. So yeah, you do need to kind of go for it, but you're probably creating your own clarity as opposed to what you deserve, which is to get it from your manager. You're probably creating it for yourself. But so it goes.
Sure. And sometimes, it's not so much that the boss is an asshole. It's just that they're very challenging and they can be very assertive sometimes, right? They can be
Yeah.
very dominant and very direct and very assertive and quite challenging sometimes because they're under a lot of pressure. And
Yeah.
so,
So in that case, I think it's different, right? Then it's boundary management. That's a very different managing up challenge, which is, they're so assertive, they're so aggressive, their standards are so high. So now you're managing up is to be clear about, what is possible, what you're willing to do, what your standards are. And then you start having to say things like, look, I'm willing to work in the evening, X number of days a week, or I'm willing to work one day on the weekend, but not the second, or, I'm willing to go hard like this for a month, but then I'm going to need to, have a bit of a break. That managing up becomes boundary management. And that's a whole different type of management. And that also takes courage. And it may be that you find yourself in a situation where what you are willing to give does not meet what they need, and then you may be in a situation of having to make a tough call about leaving. So that's another form of managing up.
it's also a time, Leanne, where people sometimes cross over into this thing we've already discussed, which is imposter syndrome. Am I
Yeah.
good enough to do? Am I good enough?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, yeah. So imposter syndrome is so challenging because it's just your mind messing with you, right? True imposter syndrome is actually from people who are good enough. Like it's if you're just bad, that's not imposter syndrome. So it's really if you let your some kind of a critical boss or even the boss is perfectly on your side, but your own nasty, unreliable narrator is telling you a different story. So, in some ways, imposter phenomenon is not about managing up at all. It's about managing in,
Mm.
right? And so, yeah, that's a really important one as well, but kind of a different scenario.
Yeah, I often say to people, it's a case of looking at just where you are on your journey of leadership, right? Because
Yeah,
you're just seeing yourself at maybe possibly at the start of your journey,
yeah,
and you're comparing yourself with somebody that's been there 10 years longer, and the compare and despair syndrome causes that imposter syndrome.
yeah, exactly,
Low
exactly.
self-image, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, do you want to move to the next piece?
Yeah, let's go with it. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you say it? How do you speak truth to power? For me, there's 4 things that I think make a difference in speaking truth to power. So I've already mentioned one of them, which is tie it to something strategic about the business. So if it's just like I don't want to do this, or I think that like the boss, like, well, who the hell cares what you think? Like that's nice. So you really want to tie it. So if it's clear that, hey, so much of what we're trying to do with this account is change the mix, move them to, or this year we got to get, we got to get 50% of our clients off prem and into the cloud, or like if it's stated, if there's something strategic, something written, something your boss has said behind a microphone, those are the things you want to start with. I know it matters to you, or like, as you said at the town hall, or, these kinds of things. Start with the business issue. Even if you're talking about a values issue or a behavioral thing, doesn't matter. I know that you're trying to get more innovation. This is a common one, right? Maybe your boss is shutting down dissent, talking over people, making it a psychologically unsafe environment. Often those are the same bosses who've told you how important innovation is and collaboration. You're like, oh, oh, oh. So you have to start with, I know how much innovation matters to you, or so start there. Number 2, you have to remove every adjective from your vocabulary when you are speaking truth to power. So we already said you can't use the word why. Now we're going to knock out all adjectives. When you use adjectives, you bring subjectivity into the conversation, which makes people, first of all, we lose clarity, and we said clarity is what it's all about. So what it means when you say, I feel like that meeting, you were very intimidating. What's intimidating to you is not what they're picturing in their minds. And when someone says you're intimidating, that's judgment, and it's likely to spark an angry defensive reaction. So you want to say, when you spoke in between every single other person speaking. So it felt like a conversation that was all with you at the hub, as opposed to getting some things. So something objective, describe behavior. Because if you use judgments and adjectives, that boss you have to manage, you're going to have to manage something a lot more volatile, probably a defensive reaction. Number 3, if the company has values, if the company has guiding principles, if you've done ground rules, those are also great things. So one of the ones that I often use if I'm having to make a courageous conversation is to say, I was really debating with myself about whether to say anything, but I know that, candor is one of our values. We've all agreed to be radically candid, and I take that seriously. So you can invoke values or principles or something like that. And then
That's
the fourth,
that's a great point, Liane, just because I
yeah,
know a number of times in conversation, some of the team here, some of the leaders here feel like they put the umbrella above themselves to protect the team, and they take all the flack.
yeah, exactly. And then last thing, just this is the situation when you're, looking for a remedy or that sort of thing, where you do want to use a question, you want to test or trial. So like, what if we were to do this? So what if in the next meeting, you kind of waited until everybody had chimed in before you shared your thing? Or what if you presented for 10 minutes at the beginning to set the frame, and then let the conversation happen among the people? When you do what if, you test and trial balloon. If the boss flips their lid, like, no, I am not going to do that, this is my right, then you'd be like, you're right, I was thinking about it this way, and I get it. So it leaves you a backdoor to and again, you want a backdoor because you don't want to get fired, you don't want to have this situation erupt in a way that's very uncontrollable. You may choose later to say that wasn't acceptable, and I'm going to make a different choice because of that. But in the moment, you want to trial things to leave a back door. So the way you say it, evoke something in the business first, some business outcome that's important. Then when you're describing the behavior that's affecting that outcome, describe it incredibly objectively. Describe, don't judge. Then if you can evoke some kind of value guiding principle to say why you're managing up, why you're having this courageous conversation, but then trial a close. Don't be assertive. This is not a time for your power pose. No, understand you are speaking truth to power. And so use a question, use a test. Those are my 4 things that I think make the situation go a lot more smoothly, at least in places where there's some chance it could go smoothly or more smoothly. There are jerks, and sometimes you can't solve for that.
It leads very nicely on from your first point about, alignment and empathy. And what comes to mind immediately is the point that Chris Voss likes to make about tactical empathy, where you label the behavior. It seems like, it sounds like,
Yeah.
using that,
Chris Voss's stuff is really great.
it's just using
Yeah.
that empathy in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's the other thing I think we forget. So maybe let's just reinforce this. Your boss is a human full of fears and threat response, just like you are.
Mm,
And we often misunderstand bullying behavior, right? We think of bullying as a sign of strength. Bullying is, of course, very much a sign of weakness. Bullying is a social behavior. So bullying doesn't work unless there are other people around to reward the bully and give them a higher social presence. So just remember that if your boss is in some kind of a really aggressive, angry, that kind of mode, it means they feel threatened. They are triggered. And you figuring out what is triggering them, they're afraid they're not going to deliver something. They're afraid they're going to have a really uncomfortable conversation with the board. They know that cash flow is in a place that they might not make payroll next week, right? There is something going on beneath that. So one of the lines I use all the time is, if the dragon is breathing fire, it's because they're protecting treasure.
mm.
And the secret is to get them to put down the drawbridge so you can figure out, get in there, find the treasure map. Because if your boss is in that mode, there is treasure they are protecting. What is it? And the more that you can manage up by understanding, oh, okay, if that's the treasure, let me offer up a more effective way to protect that treasure than what you're doing. So just, I think we forget that. We get into that mode of like, boss scary, and we miss that scary boss is threatened, frightened human.
Yeah.
And so if we can become an asset for them in protecting their treasure, then all of a sudden everything flips, right? We're the person. Now it can become a very weird relationship for a while. I've seen that where the boss becomes very dependent on you, but then they're still kind of mean to you because they don't want to admit to themselves that you're helping them be successful. It's a bit messed up, but in the short term, it'll probably, at least you'll know that you're becoming indispensable, that you are helping the business to succeed, that you've got integrity at least. I would go that way.
Yeah, it's often something I came across when I was in the corporate world, and it was a case of taking them away from their fear, as you say, take them away from the thing they're trying to protect. People are primarily motivated in one or two ways, and as you say, the boss is a human, right? So they're motivated away from pain or towards reward.
Yeah.
And if you can find a proposition that takes them away from the pain that they're, protecting, it's more likely to get you the favor.
It absolutely is. And so I think, big insight out of this, go back to remembering that this is a human who is probably either doesn't know, so they're ignorant, they don't know what the priorities should be, they don't know what resources you need, they don't know how to communicate well, or they are afraid, right? Or they're new. We have to manage up a lot when we've got a newbie boss. So if you go back to, where is this human at, and how can I help them be successful while helping the organization be successful? That's when we get into a constructive, high integrity approach to managing up.
Sure. And so when we've had those challenging conversations and those difficult situations, Liane, how do we recover from that in a way that keeps our integrity intact, I guess?
Yeah. So one of my friends, Hannah Pryor, has this great book called Good Awkward. And it's interesting because we've become so avoidant of awkwardness. And so if you have these hard conversations with your boss, and then all of a sudden it becomes awkward and you're kind of like walking around the office the long way to the bathroom so you don't have to pass them, then it's going to stew, it's going to be weird. And we have, the way our brains work, we have mirror neurons in our brain that create emotional contagion. And so if you're feeling nervous or sheepish or trepidation about where your relationship is at with the manager, they're going to pick it up. So the best thing you can do is just go right into that good awkward, right? Like big smile, eye contact, right? Like not avoiding it. And then go one step further in what they're not expecting you to do, which is thank them.
Yeah.
You know, thank you so much for making the time for me to get clear on what really matters. Thank you, right? That was really uncomfortable. Thank you for sticking with it. Really, and of course, the other thing, well, I'm Canadian, so like we, of course, the number 1, 2, and 3 things that we do after this is say, sorry, 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 sorry. It's biologically programmed into us. But apologizing is the absolute worst thing you can do here, because it says, I did something wrong. So anytime you have that compulsion to apologize, flip it for a thank you. So like, sorry, I dragged you through that. Thank you for sticking with me through that, right? Sorry that I challenged you. Thank you for being open to, to these overtures. So flip, go into the awkward, give the smile, make the eye contact, and surprise the hell out of them by thanking them for this conversation that, was not very fun. And then, what are the things you can do to set it up for success next time? So in that moment, not later, in that moment, it's making me realize I wasn't clear enough about what you wanted. So, I'm going to put something on the calendar to meet with you again in a couple of weeks to make sure I'm better aligned, or like do something that that means that it's going to play out differently next time. So you're going to surprise the heck out of yourself and out of them, but you're going to have the absolute diametrically opposed reaction to what everything in your brain is telling you, which, because your brain is giving you this awesome Monty Python, run away. Don't, go right at it. And that will create closure that will leave the boss. So cognitive dissonance is fascinating, right? Because the boss will all of a sudden be like, oh, I thought that was a bad conversation, but given how grateful they are, oh, that must have been a good conversation. The dissonance will cause them to be like, oh, I guess I feel good about that person, right? So you are hacking the psychology of this situation. But I understand that it is not something you're going to have to like probably have a cup of coffee first, have a bit of a, and then do the exact opposite about what every neuron in your brain is telling you to do.
And that is the essence, isn't it, of creating that psychological resilience. We talk about psychological safety, but also we need to have psychological resilience.
Absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
that's the essence, isn't it? Is having that time just to take a little bit of decompression, think about the strategy, and then deliver it.
Yep, exactly. And what do I feel like they expect me to say sorry for that I can say thank you for? And make it genuine, right? Make it genuine. I remember my brother had a really, really difficult thesis advisor in graduate school. I remember his acknowledgments in his thesis was some very true statement that he could genuinely feel, that was basically like, saying, thank you for thank you for whatever, sticking with me, whatever. But make it genuine for sure. But figure out what you can say thank you for to change the trajectory of the conversation.
That's a great point. And so from lived experience, Jan, give us an example of somewhere where maybe you've employed all of this and you come out of it with a really satisfying win.
Yeah. Like, it's not a satisfying win. Probably, let me tell you the story of where I learned about this, which was really early in my career. And I had a boss who couldn't prioritize to save her life. And the admin assistant, who I really love, she was really amazing. She came to me in tears because the boss had put 3 pieces of paper on her desk with 3 things that need to be done, 3 yellow sticky notes, each marked urgent. And she said, my husband is coming to pick me up for a medical appointment at 4:30. He's going to be downstairs in the middle of Toronto in the downtown traffic. I need to be on the corner waiting. And I went to her and asked which of these, like, I have to be downstairs at 4:30, like which of these? And she said, they're all urgent. There was no request. And so the sad story was the admin quit 3 weeks later. She said, I just can't have this in my life. It's not okay. But that's where I started kind of learning to manage up, right? And that's where I developed the technique of, okay, I'm going to do this first, this second, and this third. Also managing with boundaries. Then I'm going to leave at 4:30 because, somebody's waiting downstairs for me. And interestingly, that boss started picking on other people. When that boss understood, this is a typical bully, right? When the boss understood that I was going to take the high road, I had a thoughtful, version of why I was doing things in which order and that I was having boundaries. It was really fascinating, but she just moved on, right? So interesting. Humans, fascinating creatures. So
Absolutely.
defective.
We're all driven by those emotions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we think about the journey that you've been on, how do you see the future with all the different generations that are now in the workplace? Does that change the dynamic, Liane, when we're talking about managing up? Maybe we're managing up to somebody who's younger.
Yeah, oh, managing up to somebody younger is fascinating because it brings in all sorts of weird psychology on both sides, right? Yeah, so with as a psychologist, I always remind people that our perceptions of differences among the generations are bigger than the differences actually are. So we know that the differences within a generation are much bigger than the differences across generations. So first of all, stop telling yourself a story that if somebody's from a different generation than you, they're from a different planet than you. They are not. And go back to they're a human. Every human wants to be valued. And yes, based on when you were raised and those sorts of things, there are sort of different cues for that. But at the end of the day, understand the human, understand what their treasure is, right? And help them get that treasure. That's a way better strategy than being like, okay, they're a millennial, so that means I should like post on Instagram about how awesome they are as a boss. Like, no, stick to the core strategies. But yes, when you have to manage up someone that's younger than you, I think you have to be really aware of your biases, not let condescension come into it, not signal in any way that because they're younger, they're not worthy of being your boss. But if they're new to the role, you may need to help them understand, like, what would it be? I've been kicking around here for years. What would be helpful for you to understand? Are there any, legacy issues that you're bumping into that you want some clarity on? Offer help if they want it, and then, signal to them that they are your boss and you get it and you are open and receptive to it. It's going to be really unhealthy if you signal to them just because they're younger than you that they don't have anything to teach you, because it just isn't true.
Absolutely love that, Liane. Thank you so much. So insightful. I've taken so many things away from that. I can see that the chat is going wild. So I'm going to hand you over to Steve now, who's going to field some questions for you. But thank you so much for that first part.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, questions. My favorite part. I love questions.